Welcome back to our Beetle build. So progress so far has been really good. What I wanted to explain today is kind of the ethos of where we're trying to go with this. One of the things we wanted to do was try and encourage people to get into the workshop or garage or even out onto their drive and take on a project like this. You don't have to spend fortunes. It's just all about getting out there, getting on with it and enjoying it. Now, I'm going back in time a little while. When this book first came out in the mid-80s, this was like our Bible. So this was Colin Burnham's own personal project. This was also known as the Street Machine magazine project car. Now, Colin paid £60 for this car. He found it in a pub car park. And like all Beetles, a little bit of welding, then he lowered it, de-chromed it. It was an early cow looker. Now, this is what I want to try and do again. Not that I'm going to build a Mars Red Beetle on MP8 spokes. We're going to go a little bit more custom. So in the early 80s, when Cowlook first came to the UK, it was a bit more of a mixture over here. A little bit custom, a little bit hot rod, a little bit Cowlook. And to me, although it's a gear, Ritchie's gear was the ultimate. If you look at it, Cowlook, lowered, de-chromed. Custom, had PA Cresta rear lights, Morris Minor wheel arches grafted into it. A little bit hot rod, the moon discs, the louvers, and the hot motor in it. So this is the kind of thing I want to try and get to. Simple, uncomplicated. So this is the sort of thing I'm aiming to build, which is the kind of car that I'd have built when I was 18. And to show that, you know, it's the sort of car that you too can build at home. So today we're going to start with the axle first. Now, any Cowlooker, any custom Volkswagen, it's got to be lowered. So we're going to be fitting a set of adjusters into our axle. There's two types of adjusters you can get, the sway-away style, which is this, or the Avis type, which works on a ratchet on the pinch bolt. So also when fitting these, we're going to narrow our axle as well. We're only going to narrow it a little bit. You can buy narrowed axles that are narrowed 4, 6, even up to 8 inches. You can get custom axles built to all sorts of specifications. But again, we're going to use our standard axle. Now, I know we can narrow this 2 inches and still get the shock towers in. Now, I've never done this on a Beetle, but I've done it a couple of times on Carmen gears where I actually narrow it 3 inches and just modify the shock tower slightly to clear the inner wings. So I'm going to start by stripping this down, and then we're going to cut it, narrow it, fit the adjusters, pocket the shock towers, and hopefully it'll all be good. Right, first thing we've got to do is get the torsion springs out. So get the pinch bolts out, pull those out. Never a nice job because they're always covered in grease. Oh, that doesn't want to move. This is payback time for all the nuts and bolts that, I've got a spring in that one. All the nuts and bolts that were missing that we didn't have to undo. Right, okay, so we've got a particularly stubborn pinch bolt here. Can't get it out. So what I'm going to have to do is weld the nut back on. So I'm going to weld the nut back onto there, and hopefully we'll be able to undo it. Now when we weld it, obviously we're going to put heat back into that. Now the good thing is by putting heat in, the pinch bolt will expand, so the threads will kind of go in like that as they expand, and as they cool, they will contract back, and hopefully any rust that's binding it or paint or whatever's holding it in place will just fall away, and that will come undone. That's the theory. Let's see if it works. There we go. Okay, so take the torsion leaves out. The other thing I always do is just cable tie the packs together so that when they come out they don't separate. There we go. Yeah, lovely. So we'll have to clean all that off before we put them back in because we're getting a mess when we're doing that. And just cable tie the other end as well. Okay, so before I start cutting up the axle, I just want to take a couple of measurements off it. Now we obviously know this is our centre line, and I'm going to have to remove the 2 mounting uprights. So what I'm going to do is measure from the centre line two here, both top and bottom, and make a note of these measurements, because once I've removed these and we've narrowed the axle, they need to go back on at the same distance from the centre line on the shorter axle. 12.5. So a quick rough drawing, and it should hopefully be the same the other side. So yeah, 12.5. So 12.5 both sides. So there we go, just a rough, but so I don't forget. Right, so yeah, next bit, we've just got to grind out the welds top and bottom that hold the uprights on and get those off both sides. So normally, if you're just fitting adjusters and you're not going to narrow your axle, what you would do is you'd mark out the axle adjusters 2 inches wide. So you'd mark out 2 inches here, find your centre line for the pinch bolt, mark that, cut one tube, weld one adjuster in. Once that one's all welded in and done, you'd then cut the bottom tube and weld that one in. Now, because we're narrowing it, we're going to have to actually cut the axle completely in half. So yeah, we'll proceed with that once we've marked it all out. So, as I said, the adjuster is 2 inches wide, and we want to narrow our axle 3 inches. So in total, we're going to have to take 5 inches out of the bottom top and bottom tubes. Just mark our centre. Right, now the other thing we need to do is have the centre line through this way, because as I say, the pinch bolt on the new adjuster will end up in the same spot. So when we weld the adjuster in, we need to know where that line is. So another thing I always do is I just dot punch my centre line, because I've done it before where I've then ground all the paint off and ground my centre line away, so I've lost it. So I always dot punch it, and then I can find it if I remove it. Right, so the good old Jubilee trick. What we do, put a Jubilee clamp round and tighten that down, and we can use that to scribe our line all the way around, or we can just use that as a cutting jig and run round with the grinder with it. So I'm going to scribe that, so that when we take it off should give us a line to follow when we cut the axle. Okay, so Nick just asked the question, kind of basically, why are we narrowing the axle and how does it affect the handling? Well, the reason I'm going to narrow this axle is, well, one, I like it. I like the look. I like the tucked look. I know it's a bit Marmite. Some people hate it. I'm one of the ones that likes it. The main reason for narrowing it is we're going to be using drop spindles. Now, when you use the standard style drop spindles, they increase the track by 1/4 of an inch. So push the wheel out a little bit more. As you lower the vehicle and you push the track out, you run the risk of the tyres hitting the arch when you're turning or hitting bumps in the road, etc. So by narrowing it, you pull it all back in, gives you more tyre clearance and looks good. So main reason we're doing it. As far as handling goes, yeah, it might adversely affect it. In reality, it doesn't. You're driving a load car, it jumps and bounces all over the road. You know, it's form over function, or function over form, whichever way around it is. Right, okay, so we've got that marked out, and here's the old adage about measuring twice and cutting once. So we just checked our measurements, because I did actually manage to mark one out wrong whilst I was talking to Nick and not concentrating. So just rechecked, remarked, made sure everything's all right. The only other thing, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit and forgetting, I also need to take the steering damper mount off. So we're going to cut that off, but again, before doing that, we've taken the measurement from our centre point, centre line of the axle to the steering damper, and yeah, we're at 19.5, so back to our drawing. I've just made a little addition to that showing where that is, because again, once the axle's narrowed, we need to remount the steering damper mount back into the correct position. Uh-oh, what have we done? Right, okay, so axle adjusters, when you get them, they come disassembled, so you do have to assemble them. First thing I always do, put the pinch bolt in and put that in opposite the slot in the block. Hopefully now we get the lock nut on. So we can see the centre line where that goes through, and again we'll just scribe onto here. So you can just see, we now know that's that point there, which is marked there. And then when we fit it to our beam, we align our line with our original line through, and if you can see from the side, the pinch bolt on the inside is back in a line where the pinch bolt point was on the original axle. Okay, so before we do anything else, what we've got to do is clean the paint off around the 4 axle tubes and also chamfer this edge so that we get a good penetration when we weld it all together. I used to have a jig for doing this job, but I needed a piece of metal for something else, so I cut it up. So we're just going to do this with a couple of bits of angle iron. It's all you really need. Let's just loosely clamp it all up to start with. Where we cut the steering damper bracket off, the weld that's on here is catching in the piece of angle iron we're going to use as our jig. So I'm also going to have to clean all this off so that it sits in neatly. There we go. We should sit down into the piece of angle now. There we are. Where we scribed our line, which is where the pinch bolt goes, and where we scribed our line originally, you can just see it there. That's where you line that back up. But what I'm also going to do is just get another piece of angle iron and cut it and put it to here so that we're holding the top and the bottom tube at the same time. So with that in, I'm going to tack that and then we'll swap it around and put the bottom adjuster in. Oh yeah, a little grease mounting there. Okay, so that's the adjusters all welded in, so we'll just let that cool down, and then the next bit we've got to do is clean up where the original mounts were, because as we said before, we're going to be moving those back into their correct position in relation to the centre of the beam. So I'm just going to tidy all this up here, tidy these up so we can weld these back on. Okay, so we've got to put the beam mounting brackets back on, and that's where we did our original measurement of 12.5 centimetres. So that was from the centre line. So from the centre line of the block, so there, oh man, look at that. Okay, we'll just let that cool a little and then we'll flip it around and do the other side. Okay, so as we said, we've narrowed this 3 inches. Now, on a Beetle, you can get away with narrowing a beam 2 inches and leaving the stock shock towers. Now, you can buy laser cut pieces to replace the shock towers with. I'm going to spit that one out. But that's not what we're going to do. What we're going to do is cut this piece out and kind of pocket this top part to clear the inner wings. I've never done this for a Beetle, as I said earlier. I've done it for a gear, so I'm hoping this is going to work. Let's find out. So we get it the same, both sides. We'll just flip that over, put that there, and just use that as our guide. Oh, no, that moved. Right, now this will all start making sense in a minute, but we take the piece we cut from here and flip it over, back to front, and put it to here. We will then trim this down to fit and then make a bridging piece to go in here. Now the reason we've done that, because we've narrowed the axle 3 inches, these towers have come in closer. Now on the car, the shock tower sits here, and we've brought it in. So by bringing it in, it's now going to interfere with this. So by making that pocket, that's going to help our clearance. And as I say, hopefully we won't have to modify the inner wings. We might have to slightly, but we'll find out when we fit the axle. Right, okay, there we go, that's all done. Yeah, we're happy with that, that's all good. Now, the only issue I've got is I don't know if it's going to fit. Our Beetle, of course, is on the body dolly, so I can't actually try it on. So I'm going to go back outside with this, back out to our hedge Beetle, and see how this fits on the body shell out there. So let's go for a walk. There we go, okay. Yeah, that looks like that's going to be fine. So yeah, happy with that. That's really good. The only other issue we may have is on our one, we've had new front bumper mounts put on again, and I'm not 100% sure they're in the right place. So I still might have to do a little bit of massaging just here to make sure the tower's clear. But we'll get to that when we put the body back on the pan. Right, so next thing we're going to have to do is cut down our torsion leaves. And of course these are still all covered in grease, so before cutting them I've got to get these all clean, run them through the parts washer, and then we'll be ready to chop them down. Okay, you can see when we removed the pack while we cable tied them, because if all this lot comes apart while you're working on it, you've then got to put the pack back together, and that can be a bit fiddly. Right, okay, so we've narrowed the beam 3 inches, so we're going to have to narrow the torsion leaves also by 3 inches, so 1.5 inches off either side. Now, you have this dimple in the torsion leaves where the pinch bolt holds the arm on, so first thing I need to do is just measure to the centre of this, because once we cut the leaves down, we're going to have to re-drill that same dimple back in. So 9.73, okay, so that's fine. We'll remember that one, and then if we measure across our 1.5 inches, which is to there, and I'm just going to mark that with tape. There we go. So that will be our 1.5 inches we're going to cut off. Okay, now we've got that cut off, we're just going to mark back where our dimple was and drill the dimple for the pinch bolt. So the centre of that at 9.75 or thereabouts. So a 10mm drill bit. But I'm going to centre it with a smaller drill first. Right, let's check that, because we were skipping all over the place with that. That wasn't good. So yeah, that's okay. Battery's gone flat. Oh. Okay. Okay, there we go. We've got the battery charged now at last, so we'll carry on just drilling this out. And there we go. That should do us. That's the dimple. Unfortunately, I threw the pinch bolts out because we'd welded a nut to it. But the pinch bolt, that's what it locates on the torsion bars. So that's that one done. We've got to flip it over, do the other side, and then do the other set. Right, so that's the torsion leaves dimpled. Now the next thing I'm going to have to do is install the leaves back into the beam. First thing I do before installing them, folks, is just grind a very slight leading edge all the way around onto the leaf springs or the torsion leaves. That helps feed it in through the block. So I've just got to disassemble all the axle adjuster again and get the pinch bolt out that we left in the middle. So we've taken the bolts out of the adjuster. Now we need to rotate the adjuster round to get back to the pinch bolt. So I put the spring pack in, and hopefully, yeah, we can, there we go. We locate, and if Nick can film on there, you can see, I can now rotate that with the leaves, and there's our pinch bolt. So we'll just take that pinch bolt out, and then we can fit the leaves through. It's not going in. Right, so next thing I'm going to do, put it in the vise and try and use a bit of gravity to help us. There we go. Torsion leaves back in. Now, one little point that I forgot to say before we put it in is you need to check which way around you're putting your torsion leaves in. Sorry, Nick, you're chasing me around here. So on your arms, you have the pinch bolts. Now, the right-hand side, the pinch bolts are on the top, and if I go and grab it, the left-hand side, the pinch bolts are on the bottom. So when you put your leaf spring pack through, you have to make sure that your pinch bolt is to the top, which is round there, but of course we need to rotate this back when we put the centre bolt in. So get that aligned, get the dimple in the torsion leaves, put the pinch bolt back in. There we go, so do that up nice and tight. And then we can rotate this, put the arms on. You can see that one, when that's rotated round, the pinch bolt will be at the bottom, and the pinch bolt on this side will be at the top. So once we've got all that done, we can put the adjuster back together and do the bottom set. Okay, there you go. That's all buttoned up. That's as far as I'm going to go with assembling that at the moment. The reason being, the next thing I'm going to have to do is just a little bit more tidying up on it and then get that painted. Well, that's enough for today. I hope everyone found that interesting and maybe inspires you to go and do your own beam. If not, as I say, there's a few specialist companies out there will construct one for you. So that's it. Keep watching.